Welcome everyone to episode number 32, our 32nd meetup of the Data on Kubernetes community. My name is Bart Farrell. Always a pleasure to be here. I think we can get some of our links on the screen if you're not following us already on Slack, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We are there. Today we actually had a conversation with somebody from SoundCloud, and we're thinking about creating a SoundCloud account as well too. Not just for podcasts, but also we're generating lots of original music that you may have seen from different musicians, some rap videos. We have a rap video coming up today about Tomasz as well. So that'll be exciting. It is not the first time that we've had Tomasz on our program. We had the pleasure of having him on last year in November when we had our State of State meetup with two folks from HashiCorp and Lily from Red Hat. So Tomasz, just to jump right in, can you just give us a little bit of information about your background? Everyone can check out his webpage, Kowalski.com, where lots of great information, as we were kind of talking about before, about how maybe folks can get into blogging. I'd like to hear about how you got into blogging, but also what do you do in your day job, if you want to call it that?
Oh, well, hi, I'm Tomasz, or Tomasz if you prefer. I'm interested in technology in general, but my background is purely kind of operations or kind of DevOps. But I was very interested in automation, and that's why from cloud to Kubernetes to containers, I started to read about it, but also I started to using it very intensively, and I've been using Kubernetes. I've been teaching Kubernetes because I provide courses on Kubernetes for over 5 years. And
wow.
Well, I think that's the technology that actually changed something. That actually it's a real game changer. I work at DevSkiller, which is a very nice. Maybe not a startup because it's a scale-up, and we provide a platform for testing candidates that wants to prove their skills and get a nice job. But I also do some consulting. I try to help companies, to use a proper technology to get things moving and to innovate. That's most important, to get the speed that we really need.
Okay, and just because you said, this many years working on Kubernetes, we always have the joke sometimes people say, oh, I've been working with for 10 years. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what time machine you got in. But, for you, and obviously for our community as well, is because, we kind of, I guess we're sort of niche inside of a bigger, sort of sub segment, we could say, talking about data is that, you've seen the evolution over these years. And, one of the conversations that we have quite frequently, and we also touched on this last year in November with you, is that, one of the big questions is Kubernetes even ready for data? I'm increasingly convinced, we're on meetup number 32. We've got 2 meetups planned for every week in March. We've got 2 meetups planned for every week in April. We're starting to do stuff in more languages. I will have to talk to you about doing a meetup in Polish, because that would be very exciting. Give me a good reason to learn some Polish, just to say, hi, my name is Bart and my Polish is terrible. Okay. But I'm just saying, thinking about all this, the evolution changes that you've seen, are you surprised about, the conversations we're having now? Does it seem like a natural progression of how things are going? Where do you think we're at?
Actually, we're at the moment where I guess most companies have already been using Kubernetes. Like many of them, I've seen survey results from that were published by CockroachDB, I guess, and it looks like over at least at least according to the survey, like 70% of companies were using Kubernetes in production. So I guess we are at this moment where Kubernetes is everywhere. At least when you start a new project and you want to find some good developers, almost every developer knows Kubernetes, or at least good developers know how to use Kubernetes. The same applies to DevOps guys. They also want to use containers and so on. So we are at this moment where it's maybe something that many people refer to day 2, or maybe actually we are progressing towards day 3, when everything, we have many clusters. To set up a cluster can be challenging, but in some cases it's very easy, for example, when using cloud. But how to make this this environment scalable, and not in terms of scaling your pods or your nodes, but how to make it easy to use for larger groups of people in larger enterprises and so on. So how to make those processes easily, easy to use, and to be honest, this is something that we're at this moment. So we need to figure out how to make this work as smoothly as possible.
Very, very good. And I think that's it. And that's one of the conversations, last week talking with Jim Bogbadia from Kyverno, is that, this whole thing of like, can we try to make Kubernetes a little bit more boring? Are we getting into a phase where things can get a little bit more established? And that's a lot of stuff that we talk about in our communities. Like, how can we make this, step-by-step process, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a DBA, whether you're a DevOps, whether you're trying to become an SRE, how can these things become a little bit more codified and simplified, so that, it doesn't involve, let's say, so much trial and error, and that things can be a little bit more set up. All right. That being said, you prepared a wonderful presentation that today is not going to fit.
We don't know. We don't know yet.
Well, you prepared a different presentation, I should say.
Different, yeah.
Different. Okay, so we'll start with different. We'll stay on the safe side. We'll say different. Everyone else can be the judge. But it's curious because, very frequently we have technical demos, we've got slide decks, we've got things like that. You decided to opt for a sort of different format. So tell us about that, and then just feel free to start sharing your screen and jump right in.
Okay. So, you discovered the mystery that I want to, discover myself. But yeah, it will be a different presentation. It's not going to be a demo session, but I do have some slides. Maybe even, you'll see. But I've prepared a story. So a story about a specific company. So let me share it with you guys.
Okay.
Where is it? I guess desktop one would be.
I know it's hilarious. We're always talking about these crazy technologies, but then Zoom seems to be the most difficult one to master. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so,
good.
Can you see my screen?
Perfectly.
Everything works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks. So once again, I'm Tomasz, and so I'm here to talk about an interesting topic about how to choose a Kubernetes distribution for on-prem environment. Why on-prem environments? Well, to be honest, using Kubernetes in the cloud can be easy in terms of, it's so ubiquitous. It can be, launched very quickly. But what about on-prem? And why on-prem? Well, I believe that, it's often hard to implement Kubernetes on on-prem environments, but at the same time, it's one of the things that you need to have on-prem these days, because it brings so much features that weren't available before Kubernetes, even with private cloud like OpenStack and so on. It just something completely different and totally it's better. But let's just jump in, and I've prepared a story. So I've prepared a story about a company called Acme. So Acme is a medium-sized company. So we know little about this company, but what we know is that they can produce almost everything, and they can sell it to you online, because they develop a lot of software, a lot of e-commerce software. They also have some customers who use their data centers, because they have 3 data centers located in some undisclosed locations. Like I mentioned, we do little about this company, and they have over 1,000 employees working remotely, like we all do during the pandemic. So what do we know about this Acme company? They do have pretty awesome IT management team, and like and all decisions related to the IT environment must go through or must be decided by this team. So this team comprises of Mark, who is CTO. We have also Adam. Adam is a IT security guy. We have also Alice. Alice is responsible for development, and Bob. He's from operations. He's like traditional, Unix type of guy. And I will talk about more about each of those guys. So, Mark, as you can see, this is the picture of him and another co-founder of Acme, because Mark and Steve co-founded Acme in the early 90s. So Mark is a former COBOL programmer. He's not coding anymore, but he's been a CTO for over 20 years now. He knows little about cloud and almost nothing about containers. So that's why he relies on his team. He recently lost the password to his Bitcoin wallet, and he lost a great deal of money. Some say that DoK ate his password because he wrote it down on a Post-it note, placed somewhere on his desk, but he won't admit it, and he gets very angry when someone asks about it. So that's it about Mark. Let's meet Adam. Adam is a very secretive guy, so he takes care of Acme's IT security. Like I mentioned, he's very secretive. He speaks little about himself. Fortunately, we have a photo of him because that's one of the requirements of HR department. So he had to provide this awesome photo. He has, this Nokia 6310. And he despises all the modern gadgets like iPhone, Apple Watches, and all this sort of hardware because he believes that they are used by foreign intelligence agencies to steal your data. Of course, everything he does on the web, he uses his web browser using command line, so he doesn't trust any kind of Firefox, Chrome, and so on. So that's Adam. Adam's goals. Well, he wants to help Alice, but at the same time, he doesn't want Alice to run something that can be easily exploited. He knows that containers can bring awesome features, but at the same time, can bring a lot of problems to companies such as Acme. He wants to help Bob to build a secure platform. That's his job, of course. And especially he wants to stay compliant with many regulations and standards that Acme is promised to their customers and they need to be compliant with multiple standards and regulations. Of course, he wants to increase the amount of information that he and his team get from the platform. So that's why he believes that Kubernetes could bring something more than the systems or platform that they are using at the moment. And let's move on to Alice. Alice, she manages 7 teams of software developers, and those are software developers responsible for providing software. And the software is written in different languages, starting from modern ones like Golang, like Node.js, and so on. But there are, of course, Java, even PHP. Fortunately, there is no COBOL, so Mark is not able to help Alice to produce any software. She's a technology enthusiast, of course. She has the newest MacBook M1, of course, with this new CPU. she knows what cloud is. She knows containers, and she already use cloud for the testing environments, and her teams also use containers for on the local environments on the laptops. Alice goals, the first and most important goal for Alice is to get more speed, because speed is all what matters to her. So she wants to not only create software a lot faster, she wants to be able to test it faster. She wants to be able to have more testing environments, and she wants to deploy the software to production, which is currently not that easy and not possible, since they cannot use production in the cloud. They need to run the software on-prem environments. So she also wants to leverage those things that she discovered or she heard so many during many conferences that she has attended. She dreams about using service mesh because she believes that would be a game changer for her and her team, and many other things. That's what Alice wants. Let's move on. Now it's time to meet Bob. Bob is a traditional operations guy. He has also his teams responsible for infrastructure, for providing reliable environments for the software and our customers. He uses Docker almost all the time on his desktop. He and his team designed and implemented private cloud, but for different reasons, it is not that widely popular among developers and among customers. Some say it's just too complex, and although he is very proud of it, it's just underutilized. He used to compile his Linux kernels for his CentOS servers. Fortunately, he doesn't do this any longer. He's one of few people who still uses Gentoo Linux. I'm not sure if someone heard of this exotic Linux distribution, but Bob is one of those people. He's very proud of what they've done in Acme. He's very proud of the data centers they have built and have maintained for the last 15 years. And what he wants is he wants to utilize better the hardware that they own, that they bought. And he wants to spend less time on processing tickets from Alice, because Alice is constantly sending requests to Bob's team to get more environments, to change something, to change some configuration, to scale something. And although Bob likes Alice very much, he prefers to spend time, on something else, and then just processing those tickets. So he believes that Kubernetes, especially with operators, he has read so much about. He believes that it will change. It will change the way they work in Acme. He's a very ambitious guy, and he also wants to show Mark that he's capable of providing, very efficient environment, and that's why he agrees to test, to experiment with Kubernetes. Okay, let's move. Okay, that's it. So that was Bob, and let's talk about the mission itself. So the mission of Acme management team is to choose a Kubernetes distribution. So they, like I mentioned, they believe that they have a lot of hardware and it's underutilized. And Alice still complains about about the current environment. Adams is not sure whether this environment is secure, and Bob, well, he agrees that it's time to go with Kubernetes. So their mission is to choose this Kubernetes distribution. But before we proceed with choices that we have, let's talk about some challenges that we have. So when implementing an on-prem solution and an on-prem Kubernetes solution, there are few challenges that we may face. First one is networking part. When we have Kubernetes in the cloud, providing a load balancer actually is very easy. You just issue a request, you just create a manifest with a service of type of load balancer, and magically this load balancer appears. On-prem environments, it's not that easy. You just need to have some piece of software that will configure this load balancer. And without load balancer, it's just hard to use Kubernetes. And the same applies to storage. So in the cloud, getting a storage is a trivial thing. You just issue a request, and after a few seconds, you have a requested size of a volume, with whether it's a cheaper, slower version, or faster and more expensive. So on-prem environments, it's not that easy. So and you should be aware that it will require building either a dedicated storage cluster maybe, or use some other solution that would provide this dynamic storage. And when it comes to installation and maintenance, and this is the reason why Acme is working on this project, because installation in the cloud, you just issue your request, and after a few minutes you have your cluster ready to use. But when it comes to on-prem Kubernetes, the installation part can be quite challenging and hard. And when it comes to maintenance, like upgrades, this is also very, very interesting topic. Also, companies choosing on-prem Kubernetes platform or building such platform are concerned about security, and that's why they choose to build an on-prem Kubernetes to increase security, or maybe they want to make sure that their data won't leave the servers, or they have more control over the data. So this is also quite challenging. But of course, there are some opportunities related to on-prem Kubernetes. First of all, of course, Kubernetes brings a lot of features like increased reliability that is very easy to achieve when compared to virtual machines or solutions such as VMware. So by using containers, you can increase higher reliability much easier. These days in 2021, most of guys know what Kubernetes is, know Kubernetes API, and they often just can't wait to use Kubernetes on their environments, because they probably have been using it for quite some time, and that's why when providing a Kubernetes on your on-prem environments, it will be very fast before you can at least deploy your first software on stage environment, for example. So it shortens this path. And of course, we have so many software available as containers, as Helm charts, and operators. So this is something that you can leverage. And of course, and this is the reason why Acme has decided to move to go on with Kubernetes. It's at some scale, it is just cheaper. So if you have a lot of hardware, you can build a very big environment comprised of many clusters, and in terms of cost, it can be a lot cheaper to build such environment than to use it, for example, at such scale in the cloud. And for me personally, I think that Kubernetes is the best choice when you want to build a kind of your own cloud, but cloud based not on private cloud solutions such as maybe some VMware or OpenStack, but cloud based on Kubernetes API. This is this can be a self-service platform So you need to expose only Kubernetes API and be prepared to maintain it. So that's it when it comes to opportunities. Let's meet our contestants. I've prepared 4 contestants that we will talk about during this presentation. So I will talk about OpenShift, I will talk about OKD, I will talk about Rancher and VMware Tanzu. Let's move on and let's start with OpenShift. I'm not sure if you know OpenShift. OpenShift is first of all, it's a product. It's a flagship product of Red Hat. Currently IBM, but they still own Red Hat brand. So especially with version 4, that is the recent version, it's one of the best, if not the best, Kubernetes distribution. Some people say that, some people don't believe, and some people don't even know that OpenShift is a Kubernetes distribution. It may be called an enterprise Kubernetes distribution because you need to pay for subscription, for OpenShift subscription, but it's just Kubernetes with some add-ons, but those add-ons can be pretty useful and can be pretty awesome. So let's see what our team thinks about OpenShift. So from Ali's perspective, so from development perspective, OpenShift brings a lot of interesting features for her teams. First of all, it can bring an object, an API object, a build config object, which can provide a very easy way to create container images. And build config with solutions such as image streams, image streams and build config, they help to create container images without actually writing any Docker files at all, without maintaining those Docker files, without creating some base images and so on. You just point to your Git repository and then magically a container image appears with your compiled artifact of your application, and the container image is ready to be deployed. Of course, OpenShift promotes built-in CI/CD solution, which previously was based on Jenkins. You can still run Jenkins on OpenShift 4, but they promote something, an open source project called Tekton. My personal opinion is that Tekton is not as powerful when it comes to features, and probably it will be a long time when it reaches the level of Jenkins. I still believe that Jenkins is very powerful, but Tekton is a cloud native, is a container native, I would say, approach to CI/CD, and it's integrated with OpenShift. And Alice really likes the idea of having an integrated CI/CD solution in the platform. He also thinks that this web console, I will show some screenshots later, is very user-friendly and very nice to use, especially for less experienced users. And the one thing that she likes is, of course, she will get her service mesh, which is a part of OpenShift. And she was really excited. She almost burst into tears. One thing that was surprising for her is that she couldn't run her favorite Docker images that are available on Docker Hub, and that was an unpleasant surprise. But I will talk about it later on. Why it's not possible and why it's so surprising for many new users of OpenShift. Let's have a look at some screenshots of OpenShift web console. And as you can see, this is very, very nice looking, but it's not only about the look of it, about look and feel, but it's more about the usability. For me personally, I think that you can use web console, OpenShift web console, to perform like around 70% of actions without actually touching any command line. without installing anything on your laptop. So this is pretty useful. Of course, there are some actions that would require you to install such tools. But it is very nice, and it has a dedicated developer view. So so dedicated for developers for Alice's team. Now let's see what Bob has to say about OpenShift. Well, he likes the fact that OpenShift has this central logging and monitoring with alerting. So OpenShift has all those features embedded. You can just, all you need to do is provide some configuration. They are provided by operators, which I will mention later, but it's an awesome feature. He feels that OpenShift is a little bit complex, and indeed it can be overwhelming for some people because it's not pure Kubernetes that you may know, like GKE or AKS or EKS. It has a lot of features that some may find superfluous, but it's still Kubernetes. Let's face it, it's still Kubernetes, but it's just, it can be very complex. The one thing that is one of the killer features, at least for me, is that with OpenShift 4, you get seamless upgrades. So if a new version is released of OpenShift, you can just click you can use this web console to click and initiate an upgrade. And actually, when I was preparing to this presentation, I've performed an upgrade from 4.6 to 4.7, and it was seamless, and it was really awesome. It was smoothless, and yeah, it was great. And what is also what Adam also likes, and I also think that is very interesting, is that in OpenShift 4.7 we have Argo CD. Of course, right now it's in tech preview, but it's a very nice option, and I believe that in the future versions we can expect some more interesting features related to GitOps. And I believe GitOps is the way that you should manage your not only applications but your whole environment based on either OpenShift or Kubernetes. OpenShift, or actually Red Hat engineers made some distance for you. So when it comes to, for example, CNI plugin, and this is something that Adam is not happy about. Because if he wanted to change some part of it, like for example, like this networking plugin, it is very hard, if not even impossible. At least it won't be a supported cluster any longer. And because OpenShift can be a little bit complex, it has some features that can be considered as a vendor lock-in trap. And some say that they want to stay out of vendor lock-in traps, and you have to be very careful. So another screenshot. So OpenShift has many interesting options for Bob. So it has monitoring options, monitoring diagrams built-in. So using this single web console, you can have access to all the things that you need from operations perspective. And on the right, as you can see, this is the interface that I used to initiate to actually perform an upgrade, and it's just super easy to use. And we have channels that can be used to to choose between faster and more risky updates, or just to wait a little bit longer before fixes have been provided for those versions. Okay, so let's move on and let's see what Adam has to say. So among many operators, Adam loves especially the ones related to security. So he loves the compliance and file security operators, which would allow him to control or actually to make OpenShift clusters compliant with the standards that they promised to be compliant with, and to have more insight into what's going on in the cluster. And getting back to Alice's concerns, Alice's problem with Docker Hub images, this is actually one of the cool features about OpenShift, because it has this default policy. This is security context constraint policy, which forbids to run application as root. And this is something that Adam hopes to keep as a default setting. And Alice is probably, she won't be happy about it. But yeah, of course, it is possible to disable it. But OpenShift has a lot of features enabled by default when it comes to security, and this is one of the most the bigger ones, I guess. And all of the services that are a part of OpenShift are protected with OAuth. And this is something that Adam finds really interesting from security point of view. So we need to have a login, and you need to have assigned permissions or role before you access, for example, monitoring console and or Kibana with logs console. And from security perspective, and this is interesting topic that personally I hear a lot from security guys, is that people trust in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and OpenShift is based or uses a very similar operating system, which is Red Hat Enterprise Linux CoreOS. So it's a CoreOS version of Red Hat Linux. And he believes that it will help Acme to protect themselves from being hacked. And indeed, Red Hat delivers its security advisories and fixes and bug fixes, security fixes to their systems. When it comes to logging, Adam decided that he still wants to have a dedicated Splunk cluster for security logs. So probably they would need to configure something on OpenShift. Okay, that's it. Let's see another screenshot. So this time, this is a screenshot from OpenShift. It shows an interesting feature called Operator Hub. Operator Hub is also a web page, operatorhub.io, when you can find a lot of operators. So those operators are provided by various companies. Like you can see EDB. So this is a kind of PostgreSQL operator, and you can find very interesting things here, but there are a lot of operators provided by Red Hat, supported by Red Hat, and I suspect that in the coming months, you would be able to buy support for example, for your database operator. Yeah, personally, I think that operators is one of the best features that you can have on Kubernetes, not only on OpenShift, but on Kubernetes. But I guess it's a long topic. Let's move on, and let's meet our second contestant, which is OKD. OKD is not OpenShift Kubernetes distribution. It's the community distribution of Kubernetes that powers Red Hat OpenShift. What does it mean? It means that it's an upstream project. I want to emphasize it. It's not a product. It's a project. It's an open source project. That is, it's like upstream. It's like Fedora being upstream project for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So all the experiments are being done in Fedora, and then some of those features are backported to enterprise product. When it comes to OpenShift, OKD is supposed to be the same upstream project. There was a little gap, but right now we have OKD 4.7, which was released a few days after OpenShift was released. So it's like they are synchronized and they are almost identical. However, are they the same? No. Let me emphasize that OKD is an open source project, while OpenShift is a product. It's a product that requires a paid subscription. And as you can see, Mark, when he saw prices, he wasn't satisfied with what he saw, and that's why he mentioned that maybe they could try with they should consider OKD. And the one thing that it's very different is that OKD is based on open source container images and open source operating system that is installed on nodes. Like in this case, well, it is Fedora CoreOS. Okay, so let's see what Alice has to say. She's okay with that because, to be honest, she doesn't see she sees no difference or almost no difference. She's okay with using CentOS images because all the images provided by or used by OKD are based on CentOS. But well, her team already uses Ubuntu or Debian images, so that's fine for her. So when it comes to service mesh, yes, she will have her service mesh. It's a little bit different than the one provided by Red Hat, but it's still there. It can be installed using Operator. As you can see, Alice, well, she didn't. Well, she noticed that a different logo, but actually the web console is almost identical. And so let's see what Bob has to say. Bob is worried that there are no official image. Well, the images that were provided by OpenShift, they had support, and they had bug fixes provided by Red Hat. And when it comes to OKD, they are just based on Jenkins. Oh, I'm sorry, on CentOS. And Bob expects that they would need to hire more people. In general, Bob talked with his colleagues from other companies, and they told him some interesting stories related to OKD3. So it seems like, at least in OKD3, things were complicated. So OKD3, the previous version, required a lot of work, a lot of Googling, and a lot of troubleshooting. So he expects that it would be the same with OKD, and they would need to hire more people to his team. He's okay with having logging and monitoring, so because they are almost identical, although based on different container images, but they provide the same amount, the same quality almost of service. So the last part is really interesting because recently, I'm not sure if you heard, but CentOS 8 will no longer be an equivalent to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, and some people are afraid that OKD someday will be abandoned. The project will be abandoned, and just like CentOS 8 was, and this is very challenging perspective, because that means that you should be prepared for some kind of migration, and we are not sure whether this will actually happen. But if it will, then there will be less time, and for organizations who would invest a lot of time in OKD, that would be a quite challenge or even a problem. So Another screenshot. This time on the left, you can see OpenShift web console, and on the right, OKD. Almost no differences. So we have exactly the same menu. So yeah, that's why Bob also likes this web console, and he finds it very, very useful. Let's move on to Adam. Adam, he still likes those security operators because the ones that were available on OpenShift, they are still available on OKD. He's not sure, or actually he's not sure whether this Fedora CoreOS is something that he could trust, because he knows what CentOS is, but Fedora CoreOS, he's not sure, and he doesn't think that it's as secure. At least it's not as secure as Red Hat CoreOS, and for sure he's not satisfied with CentOS images. He believes it's a joke. But yeah, all those images that would be based on Red Hat in OKD would be based on CentOS. So they would need to make sure that they are actually secure. They would need to build some solution to prevent insecure images from being deployed on production environment. Okay. So the same goes with all the components, because OKD is based on community components. So he's not sure who would provide security or critical bug fixes when it comes to OKD. He thinks that it's not the best idea to provide it for the platform. Okay. So that's it when it comes to OKD, and let's meet our third contestant, which is VMware Tanzu. VMware Tanzu is a set of products behind Tanzu brand, and it's provided by VMware. What we know from Alice about her impressions on Tanzu. She finds Tanzu build service, which is a very, very nice feature for developers. A very nice feature. Tanzu build service is based on build packs. So it would allow Alice and Alice's teams to build their container images without providing Docker files, without maintaining those Docker files. So it's very similar to the solution which we can find in OpenShift. Because pivotal products or services are now part of Tanzu portfolio, the team responsible for application based on Spring is very excited to get Tanzu, because they could use all the components that they use from Pivotal. She also satisfied with a different service mesh, which is called Tanzu Service Mesh. And yeah, the one thing that she's not sure about is this Concourse. So Concourse is a solution recommended by VMware for CI/CD. It's not that well known as, for example, even as of course Tecton or Jenkins, or even Circle CI or Travis and so on. So she doesn't think that they would use it for the environment, for the CI/CD solution. Okay, so that's also one of the things that Alice's team liked. This is Tanzu application catalog. Tanzu was VMware bought Bitnami and incorporated Bitnami products or services into something called Tanzu application catalog. And she also believes that this is something that would help her team to innovate and to deploy the application faster. Let's see what Bob has to say about Tanzu. Bob is really satisfied with Tanzu Mission Control. This is a service that would allow him to create multiple clusters, because in OpenShift, well, it's not that easy. It's still possible, but Tanzu Mission Control, on the other hand, enables teams to create many clusters very easily, especially if you have, well, you need to have VMware, and that's why Bob's VMware team is very excited about Tanzu, because you can actually treat Tanzu as an add-on to vSphere cluster. It is very easy to install. Bob's OpenStack cloud, well, he would need to think about shrinking his OpenStack cluster, OpenStack cloud. He's not very happy about it. But if they decided to move on with VMware, well, he would have to, deal with it somehow. And when it comes to challenges, because I mentioned this networking part that can be very challenging, thanks to NSXT, this can be very easily solved with Tanzu. So providing even complex network configurations or load balancers can be easily achieved with Tanzu. Now let's move on to Adam. Adam, well, he doesn't actually found many interesting features when it comes to security, and he believes that he and his team, they would need to implement some solutions on their own, like, for example, Open Policy Agent, and he believes that he's afraid that the whole security will depend on Bob's VMware's team experience, because Tanzu is a part of VMware solution. So you need to be experienced in order to configure it properly to make it as secure as possible. So that's what that's Adam's perspective. Okay, and our final contestant is Rancher. So Rancher is similar to Tanzu when it comes to because it's a platform. So Rancher provides not only a way to provision your Kubernetes cluster, but Rancher has its own Kubernetes distribution. What is interesting, and that's why I chose Rancher, because I believe that Rancher will be this niche player, and maybe because as you will see, it has some nice features, but I believe in the coming months, they provide a really compelling solution. So, according to Alice, well, Rancher doesn't provide, is not as nice an OpenShift, and when she tried to use this built-in continuous delivery solution that is available on Rancher, well, it didn't work, and I can confirm that because I tried using it 2 months ago. I tried using it a few days ago when preparing for this presentation, and it still doesn't work. I'm not sure why, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's something considered as legacy, because it seems like Rancher is in the very fast development phase, I would say. She found Istio, which is very exciting for her, and her team thinks that It's almost like pure Kubernetes that they use in the cloud. It doesn't have many additional features. She's also confused about Cluster Manager and Cluster Explorer. And like I mentioned, it looks like guys from Rancher have been working on some, working intensively on Rancher, because on the left you can see this something called Cluster Manager, which is personally I find it very nice, very nice looking at least. And on the right we have something called Cluster Explorer, which is, well, for me it's not as pleasant. As pleasant when it comes to look and feel, but it has a lot more options, and it looks like this is going to be the main web console for Rancher. It looks like many of those features available in the legacy Cluster Manager will be moved to this Cluster Explorer. And that's why I believe that we will have much more choices and many interesting features coming to Rancher. Let's see what Bob has to say. Well, he likes Rancher's Kubernetes distribution. It's called Rancher Kubernetes Engine, and likes the fact that it has optional commercial support. So they can actually start using Rancher. They can start, preparing their applications, and when they're ready, they can buy commercial support from Rancher, and without any, migration or without changing anything. So this is something that Bob likes. Rancher has this nice option of executing a SIS benchmark and see results. So SIS benchmark makes sure that cluster is compliant with SIS CIS maybe standard, security standard. And from his perspective, it's not a pure Kubernetes, because he's able to configure those clusters. He's able to install many clusters and manage them from a single web console. This is very interesting option for him. And one of the favorite options, and really interesting, at least from my perspective, is something called Web Shell. You just use it to connect to your Kubernetes clusters. So it's available in the Cluster Explorer in Rancher Web Console, and it has all the all the tools available and configured. So it's even better than OpenShift, because you have still this web console, and you have also this command line interface with something that really surprised me, with my favorite Kubernetes tool, which is called K9S. So that was really interesting to see and use from this web shell. Okay, that's it. Let's move on to Adam. He's only interested in the version that has support. So he doesn't want to have this open source version. He wants to have support. He really enjoys having this CIS benchmark, and again, like with Tanzu, he believes that they would need to configure open policy agent and create rules that would protect the clusters. He also finds this authentication options, many authentication options to configure, a really nice thing to have. Let's see how it looks like. So in Rancher, you have very easy panel to configure your authentication. So you can use, for example, GitHub, Keycloak. There is a OIDC option as well. And this is very nice and easy to configure. And this is one of the things that Adams enjoy. Okay, I think that's it. And so they discussed for long hours or maybe even days. I'm not sure. They are, like I mentioned, very secretive. And here are some final notes, final thoughts that Mark. So he gathered feedback from his team, and that's what he thinks about those options. So first of all, he thinks that if they had a big budget, they would definitely choose OpenShift, because for on-prem environments, this is very compelling option with so many interesting features, including development and security as well. Second, because OpenShift is so awesome, it has so many features, maybe they would go with OKD, as long as they don't know whether it will be abundant or not, but they would still need hire more people, and this is the decision that he needs to he needs to make with Steve, and so they would need more people, at least people in Bob's team. Third is they don't know. They have some VMware infrastructure, but they don't know whether they want to enlarge and whether they want to rely on VMware. If they decided to go with VMware, then Tanzu is probably the best choice, because it's also an enterprise option with commercial support that they would need and use. So only if they used VMware, that would be a pretty good choice. And the last part is Rancher seems to be a really nice option for them. It lacks advanced features, of course, but they believe, and so am I. I also believe that in the coming months, or maybe in the coming year or so, they could probably get a nice set of features, and it's more universal. So they could also use it for creating cloud, Kubernetes clusters, and so on. So that's it. After Mark finished talking, suddenly someone knocked on the door, on the door to the conference room that they gathered in, and it was one of the Bob's employees, and he just couldn't wait to ask this very, very interesting question. Maybe they should buy their own Kubernetes. And as you can see, there are facial expressions say it all, because to be honest, building a Kubernetes distribution, it's not an easy task, but I guess it's just a topic for another presentation, maybe article or something else. That's it from me for today. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Wow. I think there are a lot of things that can come to mind. First of all, Tomasz, congratulations. That was absolutely incredible. We've done 32 meetups, and none of them have taken that style. I think that sets a very high standard, and it's a good indicator for a lot of folks out there that contextualizing things, particularly in the framework of a TV show that we all love very much, The Office, and that we all miss.
So you know it. So okay.
Seen 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I think another thing that's interesting for me as well too, and I'm curious about how you encounter this in your work, is that how you profile those different people. And so we have different backgrounds, different needs, kind of like buyer personas that we frequently find. And so a lot of times how you might explain something to one person, or you have to keep those things in mind when finding the right solution. When you're dealing with different profiles, how do you do that? I mean, because sometimes you might have to go really high level, really low level. What's your strategy?
To be honest, I wanted to have Adam's perspective, because many companies, we have many Alices, we have many people interested in, let's get this Kubernetes up and running. We just need it. We have our configuration ready. So Alice's perspective is kind of very common to see in many companies, and there are tons of publications, tons of proofs that Kubernetes is the way to go. I noticed that operations guys, like operations teams like Bob, it depends. There are some companies who has these progressive teams who are willing to experiment with Kubernetes. However, sometimes those guys are just afraid of Kubernetes, but there's a reason, and there's a valid reason. And I believe that they sometimes they are scared to admit it, but Kubernetes brings so much automation that they can afraid that they might someday
lose their job.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is kind of very interesting. And whenever I speak with some organizations, I try to be very careful. I try to convince those Bobs that this is an opportunity for you, because time has changed. Our environment have changed. The whole ecosystem has changed, and you need to be aware that this is something that you need to work. You will be working in the coming years. You need to prepare to maybe not like it, but at least to use it. So this is Bob's perspective. This is something very interesting. On the other hand, I saw it many times that you talk with development teams, you talk with operations teams. They agree that everything is fine. We already prepared something, but one day comes this Adam and says, you know what? This is insecure. This is insecure. We cannot go with that project any longer. And that's why you need to be aware that someday, maybe you are not aware that in your organization there is this secretive, a very secret maybe team who will ask hard questions, and you need to be prepared for them. And that's why I wanted to have also Adam's perspective. And this is my kind of tip for any of you. Just make sure that when you're implementing your Kubernetes environment, building your platform, to ask someone from security team. Just find the security team and ask him, whether this would be compliant with the regulations, with companies' standards.
And that's a frequent comment that I've mentioned multiple times, like on a cultural level, is that very often security seems like the last thing that people want to be implementing, when it really, and we've had this conversation. We had it with once again repeating Jim Bogwadia from Caverno, that should security be a day 2 conversation, a day 1, or a day 0? How do we keep that involved? And it's not to feel like you're being watched by the police, that you're cutting anybody's wings, but it's because what they say is, with great freedom comes great responsibility, and that you want to make sure that your environment's safe from the very beginning, because what they say is that it only takes 10 minutes from after a container is created for it to start being attacked. Yeah. These are things that, it's also a great way to sell security products if you tell people that. But I think a lot of it's a cultural thing and a mentality thing.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing, because this Acme, this is a company, this is medium-sized company. But when, for example, if you have startup, you don't have such problems. You just use cloud, and at first maybe you don't care even so much about security. But for medium enterprise, or for medium companies, or for those companies who don't want to use cloud because of security constraints, because of security requirements, this is a topic that will come up eventually. So,
and earlier this week, with the conversation we had with Ben Rogojan, was that when we're talking about data management in a lot of companies, a lot of times, something's in one place, something's in another place. And so the idea for a company is like, look, we don't even have control of our own resources. We're going to move all of this into an environment that we're not familiar with. It's very scary. And, people are resistant to change in general. So I think a lot of this is about change management, and very often that it's not just, the monolith, the technological monolith, but I think it's the mindset monolith that people don't want to break out of. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing.
No,
I always say when I speak with security teams, if I can, sometimes they don't appear. They are so secret. Whenever I have a chance to talk with them, I tell them one thing, that guys, this is a great opportunity to move your security requirements from those, lengthy documents, whether DoK documents, PDF documents, or even paper documents, with your security requirements, to actually implement them or to keep them in code, in repository. So they wouldn't have to be, implemented by someone. They would be applied automatically, because they will stay in repository. If you use, for example, this is something that I really recommend. If you use this GitOps approach, every change will go through Git. Everything will be transparent. So I think that's something that they should be looking forward to.
That's a good point. Yeah. Like you said, from a transparency, documentation, paper trail, following. If somebody leaves the company, does all of this leave with them? I saw somebody earlier today tweeting about how Slack is not documentation. Like that doesn't count. Like we need to be.
Definitely.
So anyway, tons of great insights there. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time.
Yeah.
But what I do want to say is that this conversation we're going to continue in Slack. And I don't want to challenge you to think of another story in the following months, but this is definitely a model that I think is a great way to illustrate this, as well as the end user discussions of thinking about the different stakeholders that are involved in making these decisions, in onboarding these technologies, and the challenges that they're going to be facing. Some features might be attractive based on this use case, on this business case, trying to match up different, departmental goals. But like I always say, it's not just this plug and play technological factor. There are so many other things to keep in mind. And I think that that's very important. And so, another thing that I heard actually from one of the founders of Rancher was talking about how, with technologies changing over time, is that strong beliefs, but loosely held. Knowing that how I do things today in 2, 3, 4, certainly 5 years will certainly probably be different. So to maintain that sort of open mind. And I think the way you were able to compare and contrast these 4 different options and showing that there's not one single source of truth, that there are different ways of looking at things, and that it really depends on your sort of circumstances. That being said, since we're getting to the end, Gorka, can you share my screen? It was a big challenge. I would say that today has been one of the most challenging experiences that Angel has had to get the artwork. There we go. So we can take a look. Let's see. My God. Let's see how he did. Because just when we were getting to the end and you're like, and now there's Rancher. And I was like, Angel, you still have to add Rancher. So we got
so many topics. I'm sorry for that, guys. I'm sorry.
No. It was a good challenge. It was a very good challenge, but the storytelling was so nice to be able to see, like I said, the different perspectives. So anyway, I think it's a very useful guide, for our audience, and also for folks in social media to keep track of that. Anyway, Tomasz, thank you so much for your the wonderful talk and the style that you decided to use. Just for everybody out there, we've got 2 meetups next week. We've got Alex Jones on Tuesday, and we have Sebastian Paul from one of the co-founders of Docker, who's also now has got a new startup called OpsTrace. So looking forward to talk to him on Thursday. We'll have Alex Jones talking to us about the different pillars that are involved in observability. Very, very experienced SRE working at JP Morgan. So we got new stuff coming up next week. Tomasz, we definitely have to have you back. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.